Sanford. So I actually started going, welcomed me with open arms. It was a nice, friendly group of people. And I mean, it was a great relationship with them. And I needed that. So maybe she was even smarter than I was to recognize that. It's nice to be able to go back and associate with other disabled veterans because you're actually there to lift that person up and bring them along, and they're there to do the same thing for you. If you can be an inspiration, great. If not, maybe you can be inspired by somebody that's there. So that's my initial strong involvement on the local chapter level was in Sanford, Florida, Seminole Chapter 30. And then just stayed involved constantly. I mean, we're 50 years this year. DAV is going to celebrate their 100th anniversary. I'm going to celebrate my 50th anniversary being a member of the DAV.
Now, you mentioned that in that whole thing that you got married at some point. What year was that?
I got married in February in 1970 to a young lady that I met in the community of Denver, Colorado.
So that was while you were at Fitzsimmons?
No, I was home.
Okay.
Met her when I was at Fitzsimmons.
Got it.
Married back in Rochester, Minnesota.
Got it. And then did you ended up having kids with her? 2
children, two boys, who are now 45 and 43 years old.
That's awesome. Then you moved up through the ranks of the DAV, correct?
Well, I did a lot of stuff in the local chapter. Then I got involved on the department level, which is what we call our state organizations. Became an officer in the state, went through all the chairs, and became a department commander. And then obviously people who had been in the national organization before recognized that maybe I could be a national officer, asked me if I would consider doing that. So in 1999, I initially got elected to what we call the 4th Junior Vice Commander, the beginning of your working your way up to be a national commander.
So now we're talking 1999. Where were you on September 11th, 2001?
I was home in Apopka.
And what did that, when you saw that, I mean, obviously you must have heard the war drums like everybody else. What were you thinking?
I mean, almost unbelievable to begin with that could ever happen here on American soil. And then I don't know where I was originally, but then my wife had hollered to me, and the plane was hitting the second building by the time I got in front of the television. And I mean, we knew it was real. I mean, it's a shock to think that anything like that can happen in 2 buildings full of people. Just unbelievable.
Now, did you immediately, I mean, we were in Afghanistan by October. Were you thinking to yourself, where there's war, there's going to be wounded? And the DAV and you talked about how much it helped you to meet somebody that was a triple amputee 2 months before you, 3 months before you. They didn't even have much experience with it, but it was enough to make you say, okay, if they can make it, I can make it. Did you think to yourself, here we go again?
I don't know whether I ever came to that conclusion that early on, but as you know, it didn't take long before we started getting wounded back. And as long as I was a national officer, I always asked if I could go up to D.C. and spend a day or two so I could go through Walter Reed and spend time visiting young men and women coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. So I look forward to having that opportunity to do that. And one of the guys, I mean, this is fast forwarding some, but a young man came back, got injured in September of 2004, and he was also a triple amputee, lost both legs and an arm. And you because of the HIPAA laws, you had to go through and get permission to visit people in the hospital. Well, he had originally been on our list, and then he'd scratched the DAV off of that because they were kind of getting tired of politicians just coming and doing photo ops with seriously injured vets. So he kind of thought that's what it was. Well, we were visiting another young guy that was a single leg amputee on the physical therapy ward, and he was in a bed maybe 15 feet away. So he called the officer over that was with us and said, "Who the hell's that guy?" I said, "Well, that's the guy who was going to come to visit you." And he goes, "Oh, hell, I'll see him," because we were one and the same. So my wife was with me on that trip as well, too. So we went over to the bed when we finished with this first young man and talked to him a little bit. And it's not a matter that you're going to be doing any great and wonderful pep talk. It's kind of just more a matter of explaining, I'm just exactly like you are. I've been in that bed. It was back in 1969. I've been through a lot of difficulties, but you're going to be okay. You're alive. His mother and his fiancée were standing at the end of the bed, and my wife was talking to them. And I truly believe that she was probably more inspirational and more informative to them than I ever was with him in that one initial meeting. We'd have to see each other multiple times as he started to grow a little bit and get out of bed and get into a wheelchair, where he pretty well understands it is going to be okay. It is going to be better. And today, which is, I don't know how many years ago is that, 25 or something, maybe more than that, he's college educated, got a wife, 2 children, hugely successful. And, I could probably say, well, part of that was my inspiration, but I think part of that was the grit he was raised with, a kid from Michigan as well, too. He was probably going to be okay no matter what happened. But, to see him do that makes me feel extremely good that the younger generation is picking up on that and they're moving forward and getting along with their lives as well, too.
Yeah, no, that's unbelievable. I mean, obviously, you might not feel like you may feel like you would have done it anyways, but anything that you do in life, when you see that someone else has done it and it's possible, I mean, that's so much of the battle right there, is just knowing that something can be done. And for someone to look at you and see that you got kids and you got wife and you got business and you got damn apartment complexes and whatnot, and you carry on, for someone that's however old, 19, 20, 23 years old, and say, okay, I've been put in this rough spot, but I can do this. He did it. If he did it, I can do it. That's man, that's worth its weight in gold. Is there anything that we can do to help out the DAV? Anything that just people that are listening to this show that recognize the benefits that the DAV provides? What's the best thing for people to do to support it?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of different things in their local community. There's opportunities at local chapters. There's a department level donations to our national organization that allow us to continue to do great things every single day. I think the numbers we're talking about right now is we provide service to over 1 million veterans every single year. And it may not be the same service of service work when the claims representation. It might be transportation to and from VA medical centers for guys that don't have a way to get there for their doctor's appointments. We might be volunteers in hospitals. We can use help in all those areas from the American public.
So the website is dav.org. They're actually quite high speed on their social media. They have Twitter, which is at DAVHQ. They have Instagram, which is also at DAVHQ. And then they have Facebook, which is just at DAV. And anyone can get on there. They have pretty good, it's pretty simple to figure out how you can help, how you can volunteer, how you can donate to that awesome cause. And, I started off this podcast with a quote from you when you were talking about how lucky you were. And even just before we pressed record today, you were explaining, you were just saying to me, you've had this life that you wouldn't trade any part of it. And I think anybody that's listening to you, seeing you talk, hearing you talk, to have that attitude and maintain that attitude, that is the most powerful thing that a person can have. For you to be in the situation that you were in, 90 pounds, lost both your legs, lost your arm, and to get up and move forward. I mean, that mentality is it's unbelievable. It's miraculous, and it's inspirational. When you look back now, do you feel like this was the way it was meant to be?
Well, I think because of my faith in God, I believe that nothing happens to you that he doesn't think you can handle. That's the way I prayed my entire life is not, I don't pray so that I wake up tomorrow morning and I've got 2 legs and an arm. I pray that I have the same opportunity tomorrow that I had today, or maybe something more I can do tomorrow, not so much that I'm asking for something. So I think really, truly the best thing that I can say is my injury is from the neck down, but my ability to continue on is from the neck up. It's the way you think and what you want to do is, again, from the neck up. If somebody said, well, how in the world can you have a roofing company? Well, that's real easy. I don't get on the roof. You know what I mean? That doesn't look like that'd be a whole lot of fun. It's easier for me to get customers, do the estimates, and do the money part of it, and hire people that do the work. So, but I never looked at that and said, well, you can't do that if you're missing 2 legs and an arm. Sure you can. You can do anything if you're missing 2 legs and an arm. Anybody out there, our DAV members, or anybody that's sustained any form of an injury that wants to give up, I'm just here to tell you, you don't need to give up. Don't ever give up. There's a challenge out there. Just accept the challenge and move forward.
Well, I don't think I have anything else to say after that. You got anything else? The floor is yours.
I just want to thank you again. I know we did at the beginning of the podcast, but thank you for the opportunity for allowing DAV and me to come as a representative to be on the program with you. I hope we got millions of people out there that heard the podcast or will hear it in the future, and that they'll remember that the DAV is, if they're a veteran, it's there for them and their family and dependents. If they're a member of the American public that would just like to reach out and do something to help their fellow disabled veterans, you can get hold of dav.org, just like you mentioned before. We would welcome the opportunity that you would come to us and offer to help.
Well, I'm sure that folks will definitely do that, and I know you're thanking me for having you out here, but this is it's absolute honor for me to be able to sit here and talk with you, and thank you for coming on the show, and thanks for sharing your experiences, and more important, thank you for your service, for your sacrifice, and not just what you did, in Vietnam, but for what you've done with the DAV and what you've done to help, my generation of warriors who have suffered greatly and who are able to look at you as a mentor and as an inspiration so that they can do exactly what you said, which is never give up and keep moving forward. So with that, thank you for coming on the show, and thank you for everything.
Thank you, Jocko. We appreciate it.
And with that, Mr. Sursley has left the building.
Yep.
How does that man not change your attitude about just about everything that you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Big time. And he said something that kind of, this was real small, but I was like, this is different. When you were talking about when he was talking about how he didn't drink and do that, and his dad's alcoholic. So that's not just, oh yeah, I just didn't. But the way he said it was this. He was like, I knew that wasn't a path I was going to go down, right? But then he said, and I want to kind of I'm paraphrasing, obviously. I want to let everyone know that you don't have to give up or something. He didn't say don't give up like this big thing. It's like, he said you don't need to give up, kind of thing, because in my mind anyway, it seemed like giving up seems like such a viable option,
Yeah, for sure.
And then he's like, oh no, you don't need to do that.
Yeah,
you don't need to do that. Like kind of like, no, you can actually do this other thing, kind of thing. Like he made it sound so casual, but almost like, hey, it's almost like he reversed it all the way back down to the bare decision making of it. you know, rather than like, oh, this hard battle or whatever. It's hard battle, 100%, but that's not what he was focusing on. The way he said it, that's what it sounded like.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, that's kind of a interesting sort of